I'm back and better than ever. I just want to feel like I'm enough, and I want people listening to this to feel enough, and so much more. Let's get a little bit more dangerous this season. Let's get dangerously dainty. I just want to reinvent myself this year. I'm just so over being cookie cutter and pleasing others. I want to please myself. Welcome to Season 2 of Dangerously Dainty, the podcast, where we chat with underestimated people who make bold moves. Let's start Season 2 with a bang. Happy 2020, everyone. I can relate to the pressures that the holiday and the new year can bring, especially with the pressure to come up with resolutions, like diets and exercise. But to me, the new year is just another indication of a new chapter. To not start, but to continue reinventing ourselves, while also balancing being patient with ourselves throughout that change and feeling enough. I'll get into how I feel about all of this later this season, but first, let's introduce the first guest of the season. Let's welcome James Lanteeri, aka Uncle Jim. After 25 years in retail management and 9 years as a store manager for Office Depot and Michaels, Jim has recently gone into real estate with Coldwell Banker in the Central Florida area. He's the perfect guest to kick off the season because he's the epitome of taking risks, starting new and trusting your gut to accept change and get outside of your comfort zone. So cheers to starting anew, embracing change, and taking risks. I hope you enjoy episode 1 of season 2, Dangerously Dainty. Welcome to the first episode, and thank you for joining me. I think your story of having this career change is really insightful, and I have a lot of young friends who listen to the podcast, and I think it's really helpful to always hear different stories. And I've had other relatives like my dad and sister talk about how they got to where they're at now, and sometimes we're always so focused on that final destination and you don't enjoy the process. And sometimes in the process, you might realize things that, I actually enjoy this part of the journey. And that can take you into a completely other career path or passion. So I like to start off with asking a little bit about your journey with your career before real estate, and just some background.
Sure. Well, I can tell you that, if we go way back, because your uncle is pretty old. So, but if we go back to the late 80s, that was one of my first jobs. I actually worked for BJ's Wholesale Club. So that was my first real retail besides my parents. My parents had a video store, with VHS tapes. I worked there for a little bit, in early high school, but because it was my parents' business and I wasn't a very disciplined teen, my parents said basically, you need to get a different job. You can't work here, because you want to play around. And I said, okay. So I got a job at BJ's Wholesale Club and the late 80s. And I worked there for 4 years, and I did every job almost in that particular type of retail club. I started off as a cashier, and then I went to early morning stocking crews. So then I went to overnights because it paid more money. And then from there, I went to the tire center and I worked in the auto area before I actually left New York to come to Florida. So when I left there, I was making a decent hourly rate, in New York, but moving to Florida, wow, that just changed everything. In the early '90s, jobs were paying like $6 and change to start for hourly rates, and just looking for a job was difficult when I first came down here in the early '90s. And I found a job working for a company called Baby Superstore, and lived right by my parents' apartment at the time, so I could walk to work. And it was they specialized in the baby industry. So, and you may recognize the name Baby Superstore because they were bought out by Toys R Us and they became Babies R Us. Yeah. So in the beginning, I worked for that company for a while. This is before I met your aunt, and I got recruited to set up new stores for the company. So I literally went around the country and remodeled 38 stores during a year and a half. And it was intense. That taught me a lot of discipline from setting up a brand new store from an empty shell to a sellable retail environment where customers could come in and shop. And you would be working with temp workers. So that gave me skill sets to work with individuals, being able to delegate responsibilities, being able to do the work yourself, and also to design new concepts. So when I worked for that company, I worked in a particular area of the setup of a store, and I worked with vendors to designate training videos for baby stuff. So for example, there's a company called Jerry, and they did backpacks and like little tents and all that type of stuff. And they created a video just for Baby Superstore, Babies R Us, that I set up a section of the store, and we would put video monitors, run their videotapes, and help solicit extra business. So I worked with different vendors doing that. Got really good experience setting up these stores. And funny story was I was supposed to be promoted to help run these setups of the new stores. I took a vacation, and while I was on vacation, Baby Superstore sold the company to Toys R Us. So the person that was supposed to promote me kind of disappeared and took a higher position at Toys R Us, never to be found. And I basically came back from the store opening teams kind of jaded, and I kind of just said, okay, well, I think I want if I can start a career out starting at an entry-level manager position, I'll take it. And I did that. I took an entry-level co-manager position in a high-volume, Babies R Us store, and I did that for close to 7 years. So I was basically like a co-manager, assistant manager for those 7 years, waiting to be promoted to a store manager position, and got frustrated during those years. With some of, and those are the downfalls of retail. They can be tough because if you don't impress the right people at the right time, your career is not going to progress. So I left that company, and just so happened, obviously I met your aunt at the beginning of that, And when I left the company, she was working for a company, Office Depot,
Mhm.
and she reached out to the district manager on the retail stores, and he interviewed and hired me as an assistant manager back then after I left Babies R Us, and I started my career out in Office Depot. You know,
Yeah.
kind of lost, still not sure about, what career path I wanted. I know management was good, money was decent. So I just kept going along the path, kind of going day to day. And I think, like you said, things happen for a reason.
Mhm.
I was an assistant manager with Office Depot for 9 years.
Wow.
I watched people that I trained as part-time associates move beyond me and become store managers uh, beyond me. So I was kind of like looking in the mirror, saying to myself, what am I doing wrong? I said, and how could all these people be better than me? They're just moving ahead. And that was the first part, I think, in my life where I had to look in the mirror,
Mhm.
and you had to critique yourself and be your constructive criticism,
Mhm.
and look at yourself and say, okay, well, maybe this is wrong, maybe I'm not doing things right. I need to model off of people that have what I want,
Mhm.
and whether I agree with it or not, start modeling the behaviors and try to analyze. And what I did, I was able to evaluate myself each month and kind of do a check-in with myself and say, how am I progressing?
Mm.
How does my boss see me? I get feedback from my boss and take the constructive criticism to improve myself,
Yeah.
because that individual had my best interest. And it turns out that that individual is still one of my best friends to this day. I consider him one of my mentors,
Mm.
and he helped me
Yeah.
achieve that store manager position, where I got my first store with the Office Depot company. And, I still say to this day that had I been promoted at an earlier time in my career, where, I took a store manager position, I would have made mistakes, and
Mm.
I don't think I would have had the tenure. I wouldn't have lasted. I would have made a serious mistake, or some
Mm.
type of error or judgment, or the way I viewed or perceived things, and I wouldn't have been successful. So I
Yeah.
think I think that I did have the 9 years before I became a store manager, because I don't think I would have been successful. So, and like you said, I
Yeah.
think things happen for a reason.
Yeah, there's so many nuggets there in your story of wisdom and things that are very similar from what I've heard other guests say before. Um, in saying that you worked with vendors at the baby superstore. Those are already skills that I think people, when we first get our jobs or internships and are at the lower tiered level at an organization or a company, we kind of tend to complain and not want to do the grunt work or the harder skills. We want to just jump up or level up faster. And we live in a society now that revolves around instant gratification. And I think as a young person, I sometimes get frustrated and want to go 3 steps ahead in my career, but I need to realize that I need to focus on building myself up at point A, like you had as an associate manager at Office Depot. And that's still hard because you start comparing yourself to other people who somehow are just going so beyond what where you are at, and you wonder why people don't value you, or
Mhm.
why what you're is are you doing something wrong?
You,
That's
you know what
such
you yeah, you kind of make excuses because
Mhm.
you look at the other individuals that are achieving so much more, and you might say, oh well, they got that because they looked a certain way,
Yeah.
and they got on, they're their best friends, they hang out, they do
Mhm.
this, that's why this person, you can make those excuses
Mhm.
like forever.
Yeah.
Instead of looking in the mirror and saying, maybe I don't have what I want because I'm not portraying the right behaviors. I'm not
Yes.
doing what I need to do to achieve that. And sometimes
Mhm.
that's just being naive or, not knowing any better.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's just not acceptance to,
Yeah.
because you feel you might be better than you really are. So,
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of learning from the game, learning from wherever you're working and learning from the executives or the higher ups and seeing what did they do to get to where they're at. And it's all about strategy, kind of observing the tendencies that that successful people have, and having a mentor really helps in that process of learning what are the things that I can improve on. Like you said, the constructive criticism can be very helpful from
hey, that's a tough
mentor.
one. Let me tell
Mhm.
you that was the most difficult thing in my career, to listen to somebody above you giving you honest feedback. And sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
You don't want to agree with it. Oh, that's not right. But
Mhm.
then if you open yourself up to say, okay, I'll listen to what you have to say, and I will try to make an effort to change.
Mhm.
And that's how it all starts. And in the retail career, just knowing how to do the job, just knowing how to do the operational point of the job doesn't mean you're going to be a successful manager either, because there's a whole other angle, a people person angle of
Yeah.
the job. And that's a huge one. How sympathetic are you to your associates, the empathy, you know, a lot of different points there
Yeah.
in a retail career, so
Yeah.
that really dictate how successful you're going to be in the industry.
Yeah, you
So,
have to be an open-minded person if you want to have any form of success in whatever form that might be. And that's part of being a learner. That's part of being a work in progress. And I think we're all works in progress, no matter what phase we're in, no matter what career we're in, no matter what we we desire. And as long as there's good intention behind the advice or the constructive criticism, um, and as long as we treat ourselves with grace, that acceptance behind it's going to take time, I think that's a healthy way of improving ourselves in that process of self-improvement. um, but how do you think that those skills that you learned in retail management and in that sphere helped in the process of becoming a real estate agent, or working in real estate? And how did you go from Office Depot, and then I know Michael's, right?
mhm, mhm.
Um,
I
to
think
Caldwell.
I think the pandemic kind of drove the retail environment into retail on steroids 2.0, meaning that everything was just hypersensitized in the retail industry. Everybody was being overworked and underpaid. The expectations for management level just went to an ungodly level where it was almost unachievable, on a daily basis. And, not only did you feel that stress constantly, and the environment I was in last, with the Michael's company, I just felt that it wasn't a job you could be successful at coming in from an external hire, meaning the learning curve. I worked for them for over a year, but the learning curve of, and people say, oh, retail is all the same. And, if you're successful in one retail industry, you can be successful. That's not necessarily true, depending on the retail organization, the volume of business that particular store you may work in, and the amount of knowledge required to sustain the environment. So it just got to a point where I had to make a decision. I made a decision to leave the organization and start a new career path. I have my good friend that was my retail peer mentor. His wife was been in real estate for over 16 years now, working for Coldwell Banker, and I saw how successful she's been doing. Probably for many years, past 5 years. And I said, maybe that's an opportunity for me to change career paths. I said, I know it was going to take a long time, but my skill sets, I felt that the people skills, just the engagement with people in general would help me in the real estate industry. Some of the pitfalls, obviously of starting any new business is starting from square one. So, like you said, you want to be 3 steps ahead, and you can't, you have to walk before you can run. And, as with any business, it takes a while. So, I think younger individuals would have a better opportunity to, make a career path, say in real estate, if they stay vigilant, with that. As you get older, more financial responsibilities, you have to have kind of a nest egg off to the side to help support yourself while you're establishing your business. So it's a little bit different, with mortgages and things like that, as opposed to a younger individual. Maybe they're, renting, living in an apartment with, multiple individuals splitting. So it's easier for them to financially make that move, into a career path, whether it's an insurance agent, real estate, whatever independent, person, career path you decide to go with. So
were you, before the pandemic, were you ever kind of secretly interested in real estate? Did something pique your interest there?
I would say no. I was very happy at Office Depot with my son, because people go, well, why did you leave? If you were, when you talk about if you were so successful and you were so happy, why did you leave the company? Because, the company on the retail side of it was not going to last till I retired. So the company was on a different path where the retail part of the company wasn't going to be able to sustain. So I didn't know what the future was going to look like working for Office Depot. And yes, I could have probably been still employed with Office Depot right now, but they're getting ready to sell off their retail portion of the company. And then where would that put me at? And I would be 2 years older. So, when you start getting a little bit older, retail companies aren't just going to be, reaching out to you because, they want younger individuals. They want people that are maybe with a fresher, newer look on, what's going on, and they can pay them a lot less, to get the job done. So that was one of the main reasons why I left, because I think many of, when I worked for Michael's, people were, why did you leave? Why did you leave if you were, had such a perfect store, if you were such a good manager? They put the question marks, and, it's whether or not they believe you, so, but, that's neither here nor there. The decision's been made. I'm excited about the new career path. I think really it's just learning something new every day.
Yes.
Just getting a little bit better at your trade, and not to be afraid, because you can, when you're starting out a new business, you can lose sleep every night, thinking maybe I could have done this, I could have done that. Did I make the right decision? As long as you stay focused, I think in the long run, things will start to take off for you. And I think that applies to any business or any type of career.
And it sounds like your decisions were kind of like a leap of faith, in terms of you didn't know what the final outcome was going to look like. And I think a lot of the time we say to ourselves, oh, by the time we save this much money, or by the time that we're this age, we're going to have everything figured out. But that's not the case. I think in life, it's about taking risks and learning something new, like what you're doing, and having a shift. And that keeps a form of mental agility alive and fresh. And I think, to me, that's more interesting than kind of living a stagnant kind of lifestyle where you're not learning anything new. And I think your intuition was speaking to you that it was just no longer the time to continue on at Office Depot, when you knew that there were underlying things going on, and that it was the right time. But if you weren't listening or in touch with your intuition, I think we can fall into that trap of just being comfortable with being comfortable. And I just think it serves as a reminder that you can always, hopefully, you can be in a position where you can choose to try something new, whether it be something small or something radical or large.
Yeah, just think, to become a real estate agent, it required like a pre-licensed classroom training. Okay. So, that was a month of studying. Some people do it in a week, crash the course in a week and take the test. And my concern with that was, I could have done that and I probably would have passed it, but how much of the information would I have retained? Because you then have to pass a state exam. So it was either you're going to have to do the work one way or another. You can crash course it and then have to study really hard and then decide when you're ready to take the state exam, or you take the course over a month and read all the content and understand it to a level where after you pass the test, then you do like a quick weekend crash course, and then you schedule your state exam the day after while it's still fresh in your head. And that's what I literally did. I started class in mid-September, passed in, I think it was like October, like middle of October. And then I took 1 week to study. And then that weekend I crash coursed, because they give you like these like 20-hour crash course session on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I took the test Monday and passed it, that Monday, and got my inactive license, because you're only active once you partner up with a brokerage. So
gotcha.
And then once you're pick a brokerage, you choose it, then, it's a learning process, where Caldwell has an excellent training program, where they'll just kind of, you're new to the industry, they'll kind of give you the A to Z, but nothing in depth, so kind of leaves you a lot of question marks. definitely helps to have somebody that you know in the industry that can give you a hand and give you tips and help you. But like I said, in the beginning, coming from, an experienced retail manager position to something where you know nothing, it's like treading water. So it's the best way to describe it. But like I said, it's challenging, and now it's just having the discipline to, market yourself, get yourself known out there. Not a big social media person, so definitely a challenge for your uncle. But I'm learning and learning how to get out there and get your name known so you can get some business. So.
Yes. And I think it's all about patience and, like you said, discipline, and it sounds very, very exciting. And do you have any tips for people who don't know anything about the process? Like you said, maybe avoid taking a crash course and really focusing on learning the material for over a period of time.
The funny thing about the book knowledge, the first thing they teach you in the class, they tell you, just so you know, that 90% of the stuff you learn in this class you'll never use in real world opportunities. And I was just like, wow, but you need to know the law. So, the real estate law, real estate code of ethics. There are a lot of those things that you have to remember for your entire career path. So those mistakes can be very costly. You could lose your license. There is a law group that handles real estate issues, and you can go in front of them. You can be fined, you can be suspended, you can lose your license. So that's why there's pre-license school, there's the state exam, and then there's post school. So within 2 years, you'll have to follow up, take a test. And then every 2 years, you have continuing education where you have to do 14 hours. It's to make sure you're up with real estate laws, that you know what's going on, and you're aware of what's happening. So
I didn't know that. I thought it was kind of a one-time exam.
And then, I think a lot of people don't realize, it costs a lot to be, a real estate agent. There's the MLS fees, and there's your brokerage fees, there's commission shares. There's so many different aspects. So, when people say they know a realtor and then they tell you, oh, he'll give me a great deal, or, why can't you, give it to me for X percentage, or why can't you give me a huge discount? Because, that individual has worked very hard to become where they're at. And it's like asking your, family member that's a doctor, and, just give me free exams or free surgeries. That individual went to school for how many years to study the trade, to be paid what they get paid. So they put their dues, everybody puts their dues in. As far as individuals that may be looking to buy a home out there, the best thing I can do, there's a lot of help out there for anybody involved looking to buy a first home. You have the FHA, first time home buyers. There a lot of these mortgage loan officers and things will be more than happy to get with anybody if they have questions about, what can I do to increase my credit scores, things that are looked at when you're going to buy a home, for mortgage value. They look at monthly ratio and they look at total income ratio. So they'll look at your monthly income bills, to your income. And then they'll look at your total, bills compared to your income as well. So they'll look at, Yeah, they'll look at that, and those ratios vary according to, it's more forgiving for FHA
Mhm.
loans, compared to a consumer loan. Consumer loans have higher percentages.
Mhm.
So,
Can you, so I believe if I'm thinking correctly that I've heard of the FHA loan. Could you explain that a little bit more? My understanding that that's a loan for first time purchasers of a home. Um, but how do people even go about that process?
that's all done with the mortgage loan officer.
Okay.
So, real estate agencies, try to make the process as seamless as possible. So, if there was a buyer that was interested, most real estate agents have loan officers that can work with them individually.
Mhm.
They'll get all their financial information, and they would explain to them, one thing as real estate agents, you know a little bit of everything, but you cannot state facts because everything can come back against you, and hold you accountable. So that's the first thing they teach you in the industry. If that's not your craft and that's not what you do,
Mhm.
you recommend them to someone else that's their trade. So here, you have questions about FHA, let me get you with an individual, that can help you through the whole process from A to Z, or get you started,
Mhm.
rather than me give some tidbits and say, hey, oh yeah, you just do this, you just do that. And then somebody says, oh, that person was totally incorrect. So,
Mhm.
if you really, even if I did know it like backwards and forwards, you still want to be very careful how you divulge that information to an individual.
Yeah.
So, like we talk about, besides that, holding you accountable, there's code of ethics and just so many things that we had to do training on.
And so switching gears a little bit to be a little bit more specific about Central Florida, I read a few articles actually that say that Orlando is actually number 10 in the best housing markets right now, at least for 2021, late 2021. Um, I believe Austin was 9, Charlotte was number 5. Um, so a few different cities there. But what is it like right now in the market in Central Florida, and what is it like being a real estate agent there?
Well, it's like most of the other markets are still, they're all hot markets. It's just the
Yeah.
demand. There's not enough housing available out there for the demands, and that's what keeps the craze with the market conditions and the prices. Housing in or like Orlando market in the 300 to $350,000 range doesn't really exist. And if by instance something pops up on the market, there could be many, many, many offers within the first day, if not within the first hours, because homes don't really come available in that price range in this area.
Mm.
So that's where the demand is. So, what are the facts? I think 1,000 people are moving to Central Florida every day.
Wow.
So it's just a matter of where they're moving to. So, and those demands keep driving up. What I've seen is now they're building a lot of townhome condos,
Mhm.
and they're still moving up in price range, but they're a little bit more affordable than single home family residence.
Yeah.
So, but it's just what the trend is and what the market is dictating around here. But it's pretty much the same way in many, many areas, and it depends on what price point. Obviously a home that's $1 million is not going to sell as quick as a home that's 350 or $400,000. So
Yeah.
price points really do make a big difference in the area where you could be.
How can you talk a little bit about how that has evolved in a little bit of hearing how our family moved down there when there was really nothing in Orlando and there was so much open space, and how there's
Well,
been such a rise in people moving there.
yeah, I mean, late 80s, early 90s. Well, I was here since the early 90s and talk about seeing change, areas were farmlands, everything was, things might have been two-way roads, two lanes rather.
Yeah.
And, now there are 4 and 5 lanes. Just everything has evolved. There's really no room in the Orlando market, really many places to build new developments.
Mm.
So from there, they just keep panning out to further areas, whether it's Ocala or, Gainesville, or moving out towards the Tampa area.
Mhm.
It's just looking at where the areas that are, the land is available to build developments on.
Wow. It's crazy to compare, like you said, based off of geography as well, and how different it is from Boston as well, and how there's so many houses right now in the market that are on the market for $1 million, and it's a smaller home, not a lot of acres or territory there.
Mhm.
So the property values in different aspects of a home can really vary, and how the development of a city, how that impacts the real estate. Is the city being developed up, or is it
Mhm.
being developed on a wider scale?
Mhm.
Because that changes the amount of acres that maybe a home might have in the suburbs or in the city. Um,
Yeah, like you said, the size of the homes are smaller. The prices are going up from the cost of, building materials, et cetera. But that, like I said, it's just the demand that dictates those price increases. As the demand wanes, things will level out a little bit more and those prices will come down, but then interest rates may go up, and there's other factors that will, attribute and change the market, in general. But, it could be daunting for somebody trying to buy a new home, a first time
yeah.
home buyer, go saying, well, I'll never be able to afford a new home. Look at the cost of whatever. It's kind of no different, when I was a teenager looking at, sports cars, they
Yeah.
were just always out of my reach, those beautiful sports cars. And, as I got older and I started making a little bit more money, they raised the prices. So it was kind
Yeah.
of funny. I was like, they're still out of my reach, so it was
Yeah.
kind of like, um, everything moves together, inflation and everything in general. So it's just looking at that stuff.
Yeah, it's very intimidating in seeing the prices of homes and even rent prices right now, and it's due to inflation, and I know that there's so many reports right now from um discussing that there should be increase in salaries because the amounts of cost of living are just not the salaries are not meeting that, and especially for frontline workers and people who are really putting themselves out there and their lives at risk, and then to not be able to afford rent,
Mhm.
or to afford to put down a down payment or pay their mortgage. It's really discouraging. And I hope that someday I can afford to buy my own home and say that that's something that I worked for, and have my own space like that.
I'm sure that will happen. And you just, it all depends on where you're looking to live as well.
Yeah.
So, what you're used to, and, the neighborhoods that maybe you were used to growing up may not be the same options for
Yeah.
you, as you get older to decide where you want to live. So,
Absolutely.
cost of living is a big factor.
Mhm.
That's one of the main reasons my family came to live here in Orlando, was cost of living.
Yeah.
Well, don't get me wrong, Long Island, New York was a beautiful place to live. It was an absolute beauty. It's, just like, living in the part of Boston where your parents live. It's just
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful. Who wouldn't want to live there?
Yeah.
It's, if you could afford to, so
Right.
without struggling. So, the quality of life. So,
Yes, because isn't that true that you can have all of these beautiful advantages of being close to public transportation or the best schools and the best hospitals, et cetera. But if you're struggling financially, then that's also affecting your quality of life because you're experiencing stress and anxieties of being able to make payments. Um, but well, our second to last question, do you have any final tips on, or for anyone looking to start saving for a home, um, or any big real estate investment? I've heard so much more, many people investing in a duplex and then living on one side and renting it out on the other to pay for loans and the mortgage on that kind of home. Um, but do you have any just final tips and recommendations?
that's a great recommendation, but, to rent out a portion, but, it costs a lot of money to do that. So you have to really have a lot of liquidity. You have to have a lot of capital sitting in your bank account to be able to invest in, say, a home that might be more than you can afford, but you're going to rent out. So there are a lot of caveats to doing something like that, because people tell you, well, it takes money to make money, in that aspect, that's true for investment purposes. Yes. As far as, saving up for a home, just, be very diligent on your expenses. There's, if you haven't bought a home yet, don't go out and buy an expensive vehicle just because you can afford it, because the first thing they'll probably tell you to do is to get rid of the car so that you're lowering your expense ratio, because that's the first thing they look at. So as painful as it may be, be frugal in your living before you get a home, and then once you have that home, you can start building up slowly the things that you want to purchase and make as you feel comfortable.
That's great advice. Well, we've reached our final question. So I ask every guest, because Dangerously Dainty, part of the logo is a rose. And to me, that means that there might be pains behind the beauty. There might be struggles behind achieving goals or success. And sometimes you learn from those. So those struggles or adversity are in the form of a thorn, and then the rose is the success. So what has been your rose and thorn in real estate, your peak and valley?
Well, I don't think I've been in the industry long enough to give you a peak and valley, but I think that just staying positive, being self-employed, and like I said, being focused on knowing what to do on a day-to-day basis is going to be really important. I put exercise and fitness into that regimen because it helps me stay focused. So I kind of include that in my daily routines to stay focused on work as well. It helps me keep fresh in my mind without getting depression or worrying about too much or getting stressed out for it. Because like I said, a new career path is going to be slow out of the gate. And that could be the Thorn, just no forward momentum, at the moment, being so new to the industry. And, with people that I say the rose portion of it is to see what people have achieved, what they can achieve. Like I said, my good friend's wife, she just posted she was number 16 from the top 25 agents for units sold for December. That's huge for Coldwell Banker for the eastern part of Florida.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. She said she had the best month pretty much out of her entire 16-year career.
Wow.
So yes, so those are the things that can be a positive side, but also you can get kind of depressed watching. Well, okay, she sold 16 homes. I haven't even really spoken to somebody yet. So it's about having the patience to understand that it's a business that grows over time. So.
Yeah. And like you shared, learning from people like her to get to where you personally want to be in your journey as a real estate agent. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview and sharing your story.
I hope that was insightful.
Yes. I hope that people learn something new and they take this as a form of inspiration or a guide in the new year. Thanks for listening to another episode of Dangerously Dainty, the podcast. Don't miss out on new episodes by turning on notifications for any new releases. And while you're at it, I would love to see you supporting the show by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Last but not least, you can also follow the Dangerously Dainty Instagram at dangerously.dainty. Thanks for listening and keeping unexpectedly bold.